The scene you're viewing is a complete fly-through 3D model created in ArcGIS ArcMap using the Scenario 3D extension. Scenario 3D is part of CommunityViz, and CommunityViz itself is an extension to ArcGIS Desktop. It includes both Scenario 360 and Scenario 3D. In this demo, I'm going to show you how to make scenes like that, which is fairly straightforward, and then all the features of scenes like that. So what I have here is a map I've been working on using Scenario 360, and I did a build-out analysis in which you put future building points on the map. You can see them here in the lower right. There are also trees, ponds, roads, and I can use essentially any ArcMap layer I have. This is just a demo, so I'm showing you Scenario 360 and build-out, but you can start from any ArcMap project. To view these features in 3D, I have three choices: Google Earth, ArcScene, or as I'm going to show you here, Scenario 3D. Setting up the scenes is relatively straightforward. There's a dialog for each layer. I specify how I want the features to appear in 3D. There are many options, but here, for example, you can see I'm picking from a library of trees. I can pick from buildings, either ones that I have from the library or ones that I add myself from something like the 3D warehouse from SketchUp. There are also ways to do polygons, lines, and other things that aren't necessarily 3D in the 3D scene. Once I've done that, I hit the export button, and that creates a file called a .scene file that I can then view with the viewer. And when I do that, it looks something like this. I start up high here so that you can see the 3D scene corresponds exactly with the ArcGIS ArcMap. But as I zoom in more closely, you'll see that it's actually three-dimensional, and those substitutions I made earlier appear here in the scene. You can see roads and some polygons if you look closely, and as we get closer you'll see houses and trees just as I set up. Now, I'm moving around using the mouse and keyboard commands, and I can go wherever I want in the scene, and I can look wherever I want in the scene. No part of it is pre-recorded. And I can make changes to it simply by making changes in ArcMap and re-exporting. As I mentioned, the models generally come from SketchUp, any KMZ format, but I can also use CAD models, anything that uses a 3ds format or Collada interchange, which means that Scenario 3D is compatible with most types of 3D modeling software that a planner might run into. You'll see that the scene retains many typical GIS attributes, such as the ability to turn layers on and off or fade in and out. Also, the features in the scene retain their GIS attributes, so I can click on some buildings, for example, and get their attributes just as I would identify building points in a map. This is true even though the viewer is now standalone. I can give the scene to anyone. They can download the viewer for free and view everything you're looking at within the viewer without having ArcGIS on their desktop necessarily. There's quite a few ways to move around the scene. I've been flying and walking, but there are also bookmarks, which essentially store previously defined places, like landmarks, that I can zoom to, and I can store both the location and where I'm looking. In addition, you can store what we call fly-throughs. Some people call these paths, which are just pre-recorded trails through the scene. One of the nice things about Scenario 3D fly-throughs is that this slider bar, which allows you to go immediately to any point in the path as desired. Scenario 3D includes a number of environmental controls. It supports lighting, which is an attribute of some 3D objects. It supports shadows, which fall at the correct place and length according to the time of day and latitude. It supports fog, which you're seeing here. And it supports variable field of view. Now, I said that the Scenario 3D viewer was standalone, but if you are using it on the same computer that the scene was made from, it can talk to ArcMap. Here I'm showing them side by side. On the left, if you look, you can see a red triangle. That's called a view cone, and it shows where I am in the 3D scene and where I am looking. You'll note that as I fly through the scene, the view cone moves. Also in connected mode, the layers that are active are synchronized and the features that are selected are synchronized. One of the capabilities of CommunityViz Scenario 360 is supporting multiple scenarios or alternatives for the same location. Naturally enough, Scenario 3D has the same capabilities so that you can get a 3D view as well as a 2D view of your alternatives. So that's a brief introduction to Scenario 3D, the component for CommunityViz. There's obviously a lot more to explore, but I hope this demo has given you a brief sample of what's possible.